Microsoft is one step closer to acquiring Activision Blizzard. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Welcome back, gamers, to GamerVice. And with me here is Hank and our first guest, Gabe.
Yes. How's it going, guys? Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It will become tradition for each guest that comes on this podcast. I got to ask you a little question, of course, as a gamer. In the next 12 months, what is the game that you're looking forward to, and can you predict the Metacritic score that game will get?
Well, that is a good question, Kevin. Did a little bit of research on the release calendar for the next 12 months in gaming, and I think I've got a solid pick, and that's going to be The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
I had a feeling you were going to pick that.
Hey. I absolutely loved Breath of the Wild with the launch of the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo's current gen console. We'll see what they do soon, but the fact that they were able to sort of change the formula with that game series, with it being known for being so linear in the dungeons and kind of taking dipping their toes into the open world realm. I think they did a great job, and I'm really excited for what they're trying to do, new feature wise and new gameplay wise with the sequel, especially with this gameplay they showed in March, with the producer showing off new features and whatnot with Recall, Fuse, Ultra Hand, all that stuff. So I can't wait for that one. As far as a prediction on Metacritic score, I'm gonna go with a solid 85. I think
85.
That's
low. Okay. I would have gave that one like a 94.
Yeah.
92,
I
94.
would say 90, but I think we need to see more.
The only thing that's gonna hold them back is a new Zelda game and no new console. So yeah, if they're trying to push
that's
the,
one good point.
Hardware too much, I can see that.
That is a good point. I think that's gonna be. I know one thing gamers have on their minds is that point exactly. Hank, is with sort of the limitations of the Switch's hardware. But I mean, we'll see what they can do. So I'm thinking 85 at least.
That's a good pick, Gabe. All right.
Yeah, thanks. I like the game. I think you set the bar low on purpose so that way it leapfrogs it. I like how your mind is thinking. I like it.
Gotta be optimistic.
I like it. Yeah. So fellas, this week, Microsoft CMA, which is the Competition Market and Authority for the United Kingdom,
the UK,
they are about to have their final verdict, their final ruling on whether Microsoft can acquire Activision Blizzard. They're one of three of the last regulatory departments that need to say yes for Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard. And the rumor is, the feeling is that they're going to say yes, that they've, in the past 2 weeks, they've already narrowed what they're looking at as far as Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, and it looks like they are going to say yes. So, assuming that this is just the next of the last three steps that need to be for Microsoft to acquire Activision, what do you guys think about how people are feeling about this deal? Do you think that it's a good thing for the gaming industry in general? Obviously, if you're an Xbox fan, if you have an Xbox, or if you have a PC, really too, you can't be anything but excited for what's going to come, because how could you not? I mean, Elder Scrolls, Call of Duty games going to be probably more optimized, at least for PC and Xbox. But what do you guys think? Hank, what do you feel as you wear that Sony headset? How do you feel about how this?
We're gonna continue again because I'm getting new headsets at some point, okay? Because Sony has a track record with us these last couple weeks, and they're just gonna keep getting thrashed, okay? Sony's being a bunch of crybabies, okay? I'm trying to look at this from many, many angles, and I just don't see what their issue is. Now, you say you can ask, how do you think gamers feel about it? I don't think gamers as a whole give a damn.
Hmm.
Especially because we already know there's only one argument for Sony with Activision deal, which is funny. There's so many games involved, but there's only one that matters, and the one discussion that keeps revolving around, and that's Call of Duty. Which now, as I say it, is even funnier to me because I guess from a sales standpoint, Call of Duty is always the number one selling game in that month, or it's always going to be some nonsense.
Yeah.
But from a realistic, like how we feel about Call of Duty, that game has been getting smashed constantly over the
Yeah.
last who knows how many months. Like Call of Duty is on the like we talked in the one podcast about obviously just I don't like that it's used this way, but it's like what game's gonna be the Call of Duty killer? Like people are waiting for COD to get dethroned or wake up, and they almost kind of want COD to get a slap in the face from another game just so then COD starts trying again. Kind of like
Yeah.
how I feel. Another whole story about like Madden, and then buying themselves out of having any competition. But realistically, yeah, I guess Sony's using the competitive market as an excuse and Call of Duty. But again, we're talking about one game. Yes, the biggest selling game. So fair enough. But why hasn't that made Microsoft ever fight? Or why is Sony allowed to have about a million console exclusives that Xbox doesn't get? Right? Like, they will survive, is my point. Gamers, I think, will survive. But at the same time, gamers already heard Xbox. Sony's just, I don't know, because obviously maybe they don't trust Xbox, which I can get. But now you talk about, yeah, at least in the meantime, they gave you a 10-year signed paper. Like, that way you can guarantee yourself, they're not lying about, yo, we are going to let you continue to have Call of Duty. So I'm just a little lost where this goes. I know I'm talking in circles here, but you have South Africa, Japan, Chile, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Serbia. All these people said yay. You got the UK, which people keep seeming to talk about saying they're going to lean yes. And at that point, the UK says yes. I don't see how the EU doesn't say yes. We only got one clown in the building, the clown that we continually have, the clown where we live, and that is the US. So the FTC, they want to have their little court case that we're still waiting. They're going to dump it. If everyone says yes, you're going to look like a bunch of dummies. I don't know. That's my
Yeah.
2 cents for now. But let's hear what Gabe has to say.
Well, Hank made some, I mean, main talking point I pretty
Yeah.
much agree on. From a gamer standpoint, there may be a bit of a head clash between fan bases, if you will, like Xbox and PlayStation or whatnot. But I think at the end of the
Fanboys.
day, exactly. I think at the end of the day, um, you know, they'll be fine. We'll be fine. There's plenty of titles, not only in that genre, but in the vast majority of different genres that'll keep gamers occupied. If anything, it's just gonna incentivize even more exclusives or Sony to push even harder if they're really this adamant about stopping this deal.
Yeah.
As if they don't have hard hitting single player experiences alone, on top of whatever live service stuff they're working on. The Last of Us, Uncharted, that's Naughty Dog alone, and whatever else they could be cooking in the kitchen.
Right.
But I think they'll be just fine. Worst case scenario, um, things could go haywire should the deal go through, which obviously we're assuming that's going to be the case. If things are mismanaged on Xbox's side and they decide to get greedy with possibly raising prices or whatnot, but the way they've been showcasing what they plan on doing and how Phil Spencer has kind of taken head of the Xbox division and been pretty much preaching exclusivity, with um, bringing stuff over to PC day one, the xCloud stuff on top of trying to bring Game Pass as a whole to different platforms, like what it seems like something like smart TVs,
Yeah.
Apple's platform. So I
Yeah.
think they'll be fine. I think at the end of the day, everything will work out, and
Now,
Sony will just keep grinding harder if they're that adamant about it.
I have a conspiracy theory that I've worked in my head in the past 24 hours. I want to share this conspiracy theory with you
I
guys.
was just thinking about some stuff. Go ahead.
Would it be crazy to think that Activision is purposely making Call of Duty bad so that way they could be acquired by Microsoft more easily?
This deal has been in the works.
It's been in the works
since
for
Call of Duty's
15
been
months.
getting smashed.
It's been
The
in
most
it's been in the works-
recent of yeah, you're right. Then the most recency of like the last year, Call of Duty trending downward. Are they just purposely ignoring the community and we're just like, why is this not fixed yet?
Listen,
I mean,
I'm not
we're
saying,
talking about billions of dollars and we're
Right.
talking about the head honcho companies, like that shit that happens. So, like, I don't know. That you might be onto something. Like,
I mean,
how
that's
we ever
just-
can prove it, we don't know. But like,
Right.
that's very well thought out conspiracy theory, I guess you should say. But like, yeah, like that's crazy.
The other thing that blows my mind is, especially Sony fans, their whole gripe is that, oh well, Call of Duty, if it's because of Call of Duty and they can't take Call of Duty away from us because Call of Duty is so big, and then what are we gonna play because there is nothing like Call of Duty. Okay, so I made a list.
It's not a good game.
I made a list here. Okay, now Microsoft is trying to buy Call of Duty for 69.7 billion. I think it is 69.4 billion, somewhere around that vicinity.
Nasty.
Just about.
69 billion. Yeah, get your minds out the gutter, okay, people. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So they could only Hank. They could, in theory, they could take that money. Now, if the deal doesn't go through, I believe Microsoft owes Activision Blizzard like 2 or 3 billion. I think that's like a fee for the merger not going through. They have to pay them some type of like I think it's like 2 or 3 billion. So
Fine,
it's
I'll
like a
give
fine.
you $3 billion.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, yeah. So let's just say to round it out, they have $65 billion after that to work with, right? They could, in theory, buy Take-Two, EA, Capcom, Square Enix, CD Projekt, and still have enough money to buy Ubisoft, and still have enough money to just like another like $8 to $10 billion. They could literally buy all those developers in the same amount of money.
I guess my question is, if they go to buy those developers, all this still has to happen again, right? Everybody's got to approve it, or is it just because it's like a certain amount of money threshold here that Activision? I actually don't know that. If you know,
It still has to get approved, but
yeah,
I don't think it goes through this whole big process like it is buying Activision, because Ubisoft is only worth only worth 3 billion. CD Projekt is only worth 2 billion and change. You know, Square Enix is only worth 5 billion. Capcom's only worth like 8 billion. Yeah. So they could literally buy all those projects. And then the other thing I had in my brain was, let's say again the deal doesn't go through. What stops Microsoft from going to Activision after the deal's it's not going to happen, right? They go to Activision, they say, okay, we're going to give you $20 billion for a 4-year exclusivity Call of Duty.
Because
Like,
that's basically what Sony does with Spider-Man. I that's what I don't get. Yeah, see, this is where I'm just lost.
And that's right. That's what I'm saying. Like, what stops them from just, instead of buying the company, just making the one game exclusive?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And the problem is that it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Everybody, no matter what, there's going to be a bunch of complainers. If this deal doesn't go through, all the Xbox fans, Xbox fans, all the Xbox fans are going to complain that Sony broke this deal up.
Yeah.
If this deal goes through, Sony's going to say about Call of Duty. If it was Ubisoft, they're going to say, oh, they're taking Assassin's Creed from us. If it's CD Projekt, they're going to be like, oh, the next Witcher is going to be taken from us. If it's Capcom, they're like, oh, the next Resident Evil.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter. They're pretending like it's just this one sole, like this like isolated incident. It's like, oh, it's just because it's Call of Duty. No, it doesn't matter. It's no matter what, you're going to complain.
Yeah. It's going to be, And not for nothing, this is competition. This is what I feel like they're saying is anti-competitive, but I feel like this is bringing up competition. And every time we talk about console sales, doesn't Xbox like not have like doesn't PlayStation 5 have the console sales? Like so
Yeah.
this is only competitive for it's only keeping the competition going, if you ask me. One thing, we bring up Game Pass all the time, and I know Gabe mentioned it, but what I do see is because for how long can we go? This Activision merger then now takes exactly, right? If this happens and it says the yay, all us Game Pass people know it's like, yo, Call of Duty for free. And that's a lot of Call of Duties not being sold anymore and whatnot. I think, and because it was the $69 billion, I think we talking about 1999 Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. They just haven't increased it yet. And it's like, oh, that one's going to hurt a little bit, man. They're just creeping their way up, though. 1999, $24.99. We're in your face. It's about to get crazy out here. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah. 1999 or 24.99. But you know what? But you'd get Call of Duty. You'd get Elder Scrolls
automatically every year. Yeah.
You'd get Elder Scrolls. You'd get Diablo.
Yeah, no, definitely that. I'm just trying to think, let's say, what do they come out? Like, so think about this. At least you could say Call of Duty is going to run you $70 every year. You could subtract that from out of the whole year. So that's at least like a 3 months period, right? It's like, yo, at least like, as long as there's another game coming from an Xbox that's like a yearly type of game or game, which first party games come out also. So you're definitely getting at the end of the day, man, you really get your value's worth if you're somebody keeping up with those games and playing them early on. But yeah,
it's gonna be interesting. I don't see, like you said, it's competition, and I don't see why this is any different from buying up. I guess also part of it is that I don't really care too much about Call of Duty. So like to me, acquiring Activision, which in turn makes you have Call of Duty, isn't that big of a deal to me. But again, it's just because I'm not into that shooter game. There's people who are Sony fans who are like probably ready to cry if they could possibly think of a year without Call of Duty.
And the best part is they just want to cry. You know damn well if they're that big of fans, guess who's buying an Xbox? Which is the whole point. They want you to do that, but it's like you're gonna do it anyways. If you're that worried about playing your damn game.
Gabe, are you on the fence as far as whether it's good or bad for like gaming as a whole for them to acquire Activision Blizzard?
I think I'm totally fine with it, honestly. I think if anything, it'll breed innovation. I mean, if there's anything I learned in principle of economics is that competition between brands. Well, when there's competition between companies and brands, the consumer always wins. So
there you go.
This guy's spitting big
little
vocabulary,
little knowledge tidbit for you. But I mean, I think pretty much to piggyback what I said off of before, I think we'll be fine. And with the steps, like I said, the Xbox division as a whole is taking into making their games and just their library accessible in terms of different platforms. I think by the time fanboys and whatnot are gonna whine and complain and whatnot, they'll find a way. They'll find a way in there. And if they're that upset about it, all right, then get on Sony to, I don't know, make a new Killzone. They've got Bungie, and I know that deal isn't for console exclusivity games, but I don't know, have them breed something new. I know people are preaching about Destiny 3, not necessarily a direct competitor to Call of Duty, but I think Sony has a myriad of first party studios that can work on something to try to be the Call of Duty killer, which to piggyback off of Hank's point is like, come on, like there's plenty out there that can take your mind off things. I mean, I hear X Defiance making waves. So, that's just one title. So I think we'll be good. They'll be fine. We'll be good.
Yeah. At the end of the day.
End of the day, we're going to be good. You're looking at three faces. You can see we live in Switzerland. The PC world, baby. So that's how we actually
exactly.
don't care
Rock
because
that
we're Switzerland, man. The fanboy stuff can find itself. Mind you, I got a PS5 also. That's why I also don't care. So it don't
That's where you get
matter.
the headset
I got the
from.
best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Figure it out, people.
Yeah. There's
Nah,
always something
in all
to play
honesty, I get it. Some people can only, have one console. They got one console. They love it, and that's what they work with. But guys, if the point is, you're not PlayStation. If it goes through, you're not. Well, maybe after all this, and you didn't sign the deal, but I'm sure the deal's still gonna be on the table because Xbox would like to make Sony look small. Like you're not losing Call of Duty, so that's not even the argument. So like, you know what I mean? Like that's not even an argument anymore. Like you're not losing it.
Yeah.
Moving
exactly.
on. Speaking of Call of Duty, what do you got? Right, Call of Duty, war, fighting. All right, Kevin, what are you gonna lead us into right there? What do you got for us?
So, Call of Duty, every year it gets more intense, it gets more realistic, and just recently we had a gameplay. I don't know if it's considered a leak, but it's called Unrecord, and it's a first-person game. It kind of, if I'm not mistaken, it almost looks like you're like a police officer, or like SWAT, and you're like the gameplay shows you running through a warehouse or like an abandoned building, and the game looks so realistic.
And this is VR, correct? Or is this not VR?
No, I think this is straight up first person game. Yeah.
Oh,
I think this is straight up first person game.
I mean,
what you would think.
Even crazier though if it was VR. Let's be honest.
Oh,
well, that's what I'm saying. First off, it's creepy. If it was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as I'm watching the game, this footage, I was just wondering, like, are games getting to the point where they're getting too realistic? I kind of feel like an old guy, and with my thoughts, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But I'll let one of you go first, though. But like, are games being too realistic with how they're being portrayed now? Are we getting to a point where you're no longer like escaping real life because the games are too real?
I'll let Gabe answer this first.
Man, different ways you can approach this. Yeah. But I can definitely see from this particular example with Unrecord. I can definitely tell you it caught me off guard when I first saw it. I had to do a double take. I thought it was some real footage until I caught a glimpse. I think there was some HUD of the character model like checking his ammo, and there was like an ammo counter. I was like, all right, it's a game, but nonetheless, I don't know. It's from this perspective. I mean, I haven't.
What perspective? Tell us how you really feel. Initial thought, just your feelings. We don't try to look at it from both sides. What do you feel? What do you feel?
Yeah.
I think they're getting close, but not close enough. Honestly, me personally, I can point out different aspects of a game and tell it's not quite there. But I think there's enough in place in terms of gameplay and just taking time and playing the game that's not too realistic or not being able to separate it from reality. But I can totally see people's point of view from the outside looking in. So that's what I think.
Okay. That's fair enough.
Okay. If you had to our game's getting too realistic. They're not too realistic, but when you see something like, for example, if we talk about that trailer, that to me would be crossing the line. That would be too realistic. Like for me personally, I'm not playing that. I have no interest in playing that. We talk about there could be so many different ways you could pull things and add it to this. But even with just Grand Theft Auto and talking about back in the day when people were just like, oh my God, when you see these articles of people like, why are you trying to write, oh, people who play Grand Theft Auto are more violent or it's making you do violent thing. It's like, no, you're going to do that because you want to do that. A game didn't make you do that. And if you did it and you're playing a game, it's also because you're a little off. Something's a little off. Like if you're getting to that point. But playing that game, like such a touchy subject, seeing things that happen in the world, like the fact that it has to be a shooter and that's the first one we see, like that footage, like it's a little disturbing. Like just for me personally, like that, like bro, what are we trying to do? Because now you shouldn't be able to almost feel out that scenario when gaming. So that's where like that one crossed the line. Like right now with what we have in gaming, is it too realistic? No. Do I also think if it gets too realistic to that point, they're going to like again, then you need every game to do that. But do I think games that do that realistic point of view like that are going to succeed? I think they'll succeed with a very niche market that they're going to have a certain like group of people that they're going to sell to, because the part of gaming that I like too is like the fantasy of it, right? So like,
right.
I guess so it almost can't get too realistic because like if you keep giving me sci-fi like I guess from like a perspective what makes it realistic, but it's like I don't know, like if we like sci-fi, like I know stuff like that can't be real. Like, so how real are graphics? Like we talk about graphics, maybe them playing through like almost what they do with CGI in movies, but it's almost like, yeah, I don't know. The graphics can almost push too far where at some point it's like, do graphics really matter anymore at one point? But then at that point where it's like, I feel like what they're doing with like ray tracing and like I guess that's where they should focus. It's more now about detail, like make each blade of grass look crazier in lands and stuff like that. Because I feel like the models of like the main characters in games and the way we're pushing graphics and stuff looks is amazing. Now just focus on the detail. I don't think you need to keep pushing the actual character models to crazier graphics, but with more time comes more technology. I mean, that stuff will change, but as far as that game, Unrecord, and being too realistic, for me personally, it crossed the line of too realistic. Like I would have no interest.
Yeah, yeah. As the game, as you know how the game is, the concept of the game, it's kind of iffy. Those types of games also just kind of not quite what we're talking about, but they always have like this really try to be really realistic with their head movements, and it always gives me like motion sickness.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean. But as far as like realistic games, so here's what especially shooters. The more realistic a shooting game is, the more likely we get these groups of people, parents and just older people, who are like, these games are teaching my kids how to be violent with guns.
Gives it a
and
bad
I feel
rep.
like it gives it a bad rep. The part and like to your point, games are about fantasy. The reason why I like Assassin's Creed, for instance, is because I know that I can't jump off of an 8-story building and land in a pile of hay. Yeah. But if the shit looks too real, then maybe, just maybe, a kid might think they could do that. But if you go back now, and then to your point, like with Grand Theft Auto, I never understood that point, because if you look at the Grand Theft Auto that we used to play, Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, those motherfuckers didn't even have hands. What are we talking about? The textures, they were like blocks.
Just saying, some people are going to go up to your car and just pull you out the car. Like, try that. Go ahead. Try it. Get up.
Yeah. So, to me, it was like, I, in a very, very narrow sense, I understand what they're saying with the violence, but there's no way that you look at a game like Vice City or Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, because we're talking about Grand Theft Auto games. You look at those games, those older games where they had the biggest resistance to them. What I remember, as far as like the news and stuff, having the biggest resistance to them, and saying those games taught me how to be violent, because I knew there's no way I can look at that and go, that's real. Clearly, that doesn't look real. Clearly, that's a game. Now, fast forward to Unrecord, and if you put Grand Theft Auto with Unrecord's graphics, that's dangerous.
You start running around dangerous. The city, like you just gonna be like
real looking people, like real ass looking people.
It's gonna be like
dangerous. So so that's where I get to the point where it's like, okay, the fantasy part of a game is out the window now, and now it's just too much. Like you said, it's just too much. So yeah, to me, those types of games, they have to have specific genres. Like, I don't think a shooter should be that specific, that detailed. Like if it was to your point, like if it was Madden or like a football game and it was like super detailed like that, like super detailed,
it's almost
that'd be awesome.
like that's Yeah, like almost like the VR game they got going. Like imagine if they could make that VR game that football one, the new era. But it was like the graphics were to the point of freaking real people.
Like we thought it was real people.
Yeah,
It feel crazy because like
exactly.
that's like a fun experience. Like there's no negativity. Like you want to make the realism the shooting. It's like, bro, we're in a sick world already. But yeah. So basically, leave it up to the viewers here, the fans, the GAMERViCE folks. What are your thoughts? Okay, the gamers. Is gaming getting too realistic? What are your thoughts on Unrecord? Is it something you'd play? Let us know in the comments below. Is Xbox gonna get the deal done? Is Sony gonna cry? Are we gonna pay $300 for their handheld device to stream it off my PlayStation that I already own? You know what? Stupid stuff like that. We're not gonna get into it though. Or is Hank gonna wear the headphones? You know that. So we're gonna burn these on an episode one day once I get my new headphones. Just because it's ridiculous.
Yes.
Oh man.
And obviously, thank you to our first guest, Gabe. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me once again. I appreciate it. Absolutely love it.
Thanks for coming.
The content, and hope to see this podcast strive and prosper. And no, Logan isn't here, but he's here in spirit. This is from a past life, if you will.
Lolo Green.
I'm streaming it. We'll see you, buddy.
Sure.
Hope we're doing well. Yeah. But thank you guys so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
Without further ado, folks, man, GAMERViCE, Hank, Gabe, Kevin. We'll catch you in the next one.
Peace.
Deuces.
Peace.